I'm John Batchelor, my colleague and co-host and friend Larry Kudlow, CNBC and Kudlow Radio on the weekend, and our colleague and friend Steve Moore, the chief economist of the Heritage Foundation. We're looking at an earthquake, a political earthquake, the defeat of the majority leader of the House of Representatives, Eric Cantor, 7th Congressional District of Virginia, defeated by a college professor teaching at Randolph-Macon. And this college professor, David Bratt, represents himself as not Tea Party, not establishment, a Republican and conservative. I'm concerned with what he called in his last appearance before the audience. It was on local television in the Richmond area. He's concerned with fiscal irresponsibility. He pointed to $127 trillion overhang of unfunded mandates, mentioning Social Security and all the other entitlement programs. He emphasized the term free market again and again and again. He said that he was for a voucher system for the VA. He also said that Eric Cantor did not help solve the problem. He pointed to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, making all these remarks about the economy. However, when it came to the question of immigration, and the interrogator asked him about the 11 million in this country, he ducked that a little bit and pointed to the Drudge Report, saying there's 60,000 minors looking to cross into the border this year, and we have a crisis at the border. That looked to be, although he didn't tie it to Eric Cantor, that looked to be the heat in the campaign in these last hours. Eric Cantor's gone, so now I turn to Larry Kudlow again, looking forward. What does this do for the Republican Party in November, Larry, and what does it do for the Republican House?
Well, I just want to say, look, I'm a big fan of Jeb Hensarling, too. I don't know how that's all going to play out, and I'm not hearing yet that Cantor's going to resign. I mean, the caucus will vote for Speaker and Majority Leader and everything else, on January 3rd of next year.
Right.
So I'm going to put that aside for a minute. I will say this. I think this drives a wedge into the GOP. I think you're going to see that wedge all across the country now, but in particular regarding the House. Immigration reform is dead. That's clear. There's no two ways about that. That's too bad, in my opinion. In fact, that's a devastating political development, in my opinion. Other people will disagree. The second point I want to make is deal-making. I think this ends any prospect on almost any topic, virtually any topic, of cooperation for deals. That is to say, if the Tea Party wing of the GOP in the House is against something, I don't believe Mr. Boehner and the other members of the leadership will push the issue. So I think all deals are off. Whether that includes the VA, I don't know. But I just think that the idea of cooperation, which Paul Ryan used with Patty Murray to get a budget last summer, almost a year ago, I think that cooperation idea is dead in the water as of tonight.
Steve, Jeb Hensarling of Texas has talked in these last days that he's looking to be Speaker, looking to promote himself, and is backed by other members of the House of Representatives to be Speaker. Larry's right. We don't know if Eric Cantor will resign or will serve out his term. Certainly it makes it uncomfortable to have a majority leader who will not return in the new Congress. But Jeb Hensarling, will he take a number 2 position, even ostensibly all the way till January? In your opinion, Steve?
I don't know. I'm like Larry. I don't know what Eric Cantor does now, but I don't think it really matters who's the, Speaker and the Majority Leader for the next, for the rest of this year, because not much in Washington is going to happen. Nothing's going to happen in Washington for the next year. But why this is important is, first of all, no one knows what John Boehner is going to do. I mean, there's a lot of rumors that he may resign as Speaker after this term. I don't know if he will or won't. I think it's probably unlikely, but he's certainly not going to be Speaker more than one more term. And so I do believe, I'll make the prediction on your show, that the next Speaker of the House to succeed John Boehner is going to be Jeb Hensarling. And the only one who could really take him on would be our friend Paul Ryan. But as you and I have discussed previously, I mean, Paul wants to either run for president or be the Ways and Means Committee chairman and rewrite the tax code. So Jeb Hensarling is a big winner here. And he's a guy. He's a good guy. He wants to take on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and he wants to. He's the head of the Financial Services Committee. By the way, he did some war with the Republican leadership who didn't want to take on a lot of those issues.
Yeah, Jeb Hensarling's a sound thinker. I agree with Steve on that 100%. I just want to return, however, to what I think is the big general theme here. This is my opinion, and I might be dead wrong, and listeners may completely disagree with me. But I believe that as we move towards the 2016 presidential election, that the GOP has got to change its rhetoric and its stripes regarding the immigration question. And I'm for legal immigration, but I'm also for reforming the whole immigration system, from border security right through to workers' permits, right through to citizenship. It has to be reformed. I think the rhetoric that Republicans use, and that rhetoric came out in this race, if you look at what some radio talk show hosts and others out of state were saying, you will see that rhetoric turns off Latinos, legal immigrant Latinos. It turns off Asians. It turns off other minority groups. It is very difficult for the Republican Party to generate or regenerate a Reagan-esque big tent with this anti-immigration wave and the rhetoric that accompanies it.
You know, I'll agree with Larry on this. And, you know, I had been predicting, John, until about 3 hours ago, that immigration reform would be accomplished in right after the elections of 2014, that Republicans would see a window of opportunity to do some of the pro-growth measures to get the immigrants into the country that we need, and the high-skilled immigrants, and maybe deal with the people who are illegally and do the border control. I agree with Larry at this point. I mean, the odds have gone way, way down that we're going to see immigration reform in any kind of productive way in the next year. And I would only add one thing, that there's so much animosity on the right towards Barack Obama, and that makes it all the more, the kind of environment in Washington all the more toxic. And let's face it, Barack Obama's had a pretty bad month, too, with all of the scandals and the mishandling of everything, the new EPA rules. I think that figures into this, too.
Larry, detail here, just here at the close. We'll continue about this, but Lindsey Graham won easily tonight in his primary in South Carolina, a state where you could have expected the Tea Party to have been more powerful. It didn't happen. And Eric Cantor, where you did not expect the Tea Party to be powerful against the majority leader, loses. So could we be over-interpreting the Cantor loss?
Well, yes, possibly, but I don't think so. Lindsey Graham, if I may say so, is a better politician than Eric Cantor. And Lindsey Graham spent all his time at home, and when he wasn't at home, he was on television talking about foreign policy and how bad Obama's foreign policy is, regarding every inch of it, including this last insane prisoner swap that's just taken place. But whether it's Russia or Syria or Iran, that's Lindsey Graham's specialty. And he said to his constituents, I heard the quote on the radio tonight, and he's been saying this for a while, you may not agree with me on every issue, but you know you can trust me on foreign policy and national security. South Carolina is predominantly a defense-oriented, national security-oriented state. And I think in the absence of a strong opponent, Lindsey was able to win that easily on that case. Eric Cantor, on the other hand, I think, did not spend enough time at home, even though he spent a lot of money on this thing, did not have absolute clear messages on a number of issues, not least of which was immigration reform. Because Eric, in the waning days of this campaign, and again, I'm very close to
We've
Cantor,
just got a few seconds, Larry. Go ahead.
You know, he was trying to say to people that he's not for legalization, that he's not for amnesty. People didn't understand what he was
Larry Kudlow, CNBC. Thank you, Steve Moore of the Heritage Foundation, Chief Economist. I'm John Batchelor.